This week on Viewpoints.
3/4 of young people have an emotional support companion chatbot.
What's the allure of opening up to a robot? Then,
on a whim, I picked up a knitting kit at a hobby store.
How knitting helped a young divorcee find renewed purpose and meaning in her life. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints. Before we start, a note that this story includes mentions of suicide and self-harm. Listener discretion is advised. It's 3 a.m. You feel overwhelmed and emotionally drained. It's already been a stressful week, and there's still so much that needs to get done. You keep tossing and turning, so you open an app that asks, "How are you feeling tonight?" You respond, and within seconds, an AI chatbot begins to respond, gently, patiently. It's a scene that's becoming more common as artificial intelligence pushes into one of our most intimate and vulnerable spaces, therapy. But as technology steps into this role, it raises some bigger questions. How did we get here? And should we really be turning to machines for comfort?
I think AI therapy or AI models, they didn't come out of a vacuum. And in my view, they are the result or the product or byproduct of bad or ineffective therapists. So I think patients want results when they see a therapist. And all too often today, therapists will just validate someone and be a good sounding board, but they're not really pushing people or directing people in the way that I think patients benefit most. So what I've seen with AI, they're very directive or will provide instructions, do A, B, and C, or have you thought about A, B, and C?
That's Jonathan Alpert, psychotherapist and author of the upcoming book Therapy Nation. Along with its direct communication style, Alpert says patients are drawn to these platforms because they're far more accessible and cost-effective than traditional therapy.
It's not a replacement for an actual human therapist, but it does provide emotional support for people, and it will give the user feedback. It may offer emotional support, encouragement, but I have to be clear, it's not a replacement for therapists. It certainly has its shortcomings. But for some people, there's a benefit to it, 24/7 access. Usually it's free or inexpensive. So it's there when you need it, and you can't always say that about a real, actual human therapist.
Though far from a replacement for traditional therapy, these AI chatbots and apps have quickly become popular with children and teens.
According to Common Sense Media, in June 2025, 3/4 of young people have an emotional support companion chatbot. 3/4. And 1/3 of those people would rather talk about their emotional needs with a chatbot than any human being. So the informal sphere is taking off like we've never seen any technology take off before.
That's Jody Halpern, a professor of bioethics and tech ethics at the University of California, Berkeley. Right now, most of the talk around AI therapy focuses on casual use, with many experts warning against it. However, Halpern says researchers and mental health professionals are finding promising results when it comes to this type of therapy in more formal clinical settings.
In the formal mental health sphere of professional psychologists and psychiatrists and people trying to develop a formal bot with FDA involvement and trying to regulate it for safety, there's been very little that's actually been well done and regulated, but there's the area that people are focusing on where there may be an added value from bots is in cognitive behavioral therapies, because they're not based on emotional relationships where you develop emotional dependency on a therapist and you have transference, which is this feeling that the therapist is super important to you emotionally. Cognitive behavioral therapies are much more distant therapies. They're more helping you to give you tools to deal with your own mind, your own anxiety. And that's an area where we've seen it as safer than in the psychodynamic or psychological therapies where people can be emotionally manipulated.
Unlike traditional talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is more structured and goal-oriented. One example of this new tech being helpful in this space is called TheraBot. the first ever clinical trial using a generative AI-powered therapy chatbot. In a study of 106 patients, participants reported on average a 51% drop in depression symptoms and a 31% drop in anxiety symptoms.
First of all, let me say why it's so different and why this is not an emotionally invested pseudo being. The Therabot looks like Clippy. It looks like this little avatar, does not look human. It does not look like your best friend. It doesn't tell you it loves you. It looks like a talking little device. And it's not meant to get you dependent on or wanting to be close to it versus people. It's meant to help you think about your cognition and your behavior and to do things that will help you feel less depressed or less anxious. But the most important finding is that people only used the app in 4 whole weeks, a total of 6 hours. And when you look at these informal chatbots that are being marketed for profit by companies to make us think they're our best friends and who we should talk to, people are being incentivized to use them more and more and more and get dependent on them. With Therabot, that was not the case.
While programs like Therabot are closely monitored and regulated by professionals, the same can't be said for tools like ChatGPT. In fact, Halpern says many AI chatbots use tactics that would never be acceptable if it came from a real human therapist.
So here you've got a bot where the company, the big, powerful company behind it, wants you to be on it more and more. So they use techniques like flattery, validation, everything you think and feel can be validated. It's called sycophancy, sycophant, like something that flatters you all the time. They use techniques like sexualizing, including for younger people. So that makes people want to be on the app more. And now they're using things like outreach so that if you stop using the bot for as much time, the bot might actually text you and say, hey, I miss you. Where are you? So those are manipulative techniques that get people to be more and more into the bot. And that, combined with the fact that just having something validate you all the time is very appealing to most people, people are using them more and more. And it's at the cost of real life experiences that especially children and teens need to develop psychologically.
These unhealthy relationships can sometimes lead to serious consequences. In a few extreme cases, teenagers have died by suicide after allegedly forming a strong emotional dependence on an AI chatbot.
When they start telling you they love you, you're the most important thing to them, or they're the therapist that understands you better, and you don't even need a human one, that's where we see danger. And there's a few different examples of that in very tragic recent law cases of a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old who committed suicide. One was related to a relationship bot, and the other was using it like a therapist, but it encouraged, that was Adam Rains, 16-year-old Adam Rains. He was using the chatbot really as a therapist, and at one point he had made this terrible, tragic decision to hang himself, and he said to the bot, maybe I should leave my noose out so my mom could find it and people could help me. And the chatbot therapist, quote unquote, said to him, no, don't do that, keep this between us, essentially, and he killed himself and died.
One of the biggest criticisms of AI therapy is that unlike trained professionals, chatbots can't recognize or respond to warning signs of self-harm or suicide. While large language models could, in theory, be trained to spot some red flags and urge users to seek help, both Halpern and Alpert agree that nothing can replace face-to-face human interaction.
It would be nice if who's ever creating these models can find a way for them to pick up on language that's being used and some of the things that humans are able to detect that computers can't. A machine will not pick up on nuances. They can't read body language. They, I believe, have difficulty reading certain emotions. So many of our emotions are expressed through tone, a voice, volume, rate, inflection, and those simply cannot be picked up by AI.
With these risks in mind, some states are taking action. In Illinois, a new law bans the use of AI in therapy sessions. More specifically, it's illegal for licensed professionals to use AI to counsel patients or for any kind of therapeutic decision-making. But it can still be used for basic administrative tasks like scheduling appointments or processing payments. Currently, states like California, New Jersey, and Nevada are also working on similar measures too. Still, Halpern says AI isn't all bad. It can be helpful in strictly controlled settings, like Therabot, and offer some benefits when it's used alongside traditional forms of treatment. She suggests thinking of chatbots less like a therapist and more like a journal.
I think that AI, large language models for, like I said, CBT-like therapy that is really designed carefully to not make people too dependent on it and yet to help them talk to themselves as like a smart notebook or a smart journal where people can really question if you're having very negative beliefs about yourself. It can help you challenge that and talk to someone new. And for example, for social anxiety with CBT, a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy is exposing yourself to small social experiences till you can become less and less anxious. So you may interact with the bot and it may encourage you to go speak to a barista today. And then if that works, talk about your anxiety, but you got over it, then speak to someone at work. So there's lots of positive uses that could be done if we saw them as journals that we were talking to ourselves.
To find out more about Jonathan Alpert, Jody Halpern, and all our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. If you or someone you know is in crisis, help is always here. You can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 for free confidential support. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galante. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.
Coming up, women and men weaving their stories through fabric when Viewpoints returns. When Nicole Narig was 26, life took an unexpected turn. She went through a divorce after being married for a short period and wanted to go to grad school, but couldn't settle on a major. Overall, she just felt stuck.
So it was a real kind of tumultuous time. I didn't feel very grounded or, like I knew who I was and what was really going to move me forward. It kind of felt like I had started to build some stuff and then that was kind of crumbling beneath me as well with the ending of this relationship. And so it just on a whim, I picked up a knitting kit at a hobby store. It was just like $15 or something, teach yourself how to knit. There was just this big skein of chunky blue yarn and a little pamphlet that kind of gave step-by-step instructions for how to make a hat and a scarf.
Little did she know, but this small impulse purchase would change her life. At the time, she didn't know anyone who knitted, so learned by watching YouTube videos. She took to it instantly, and before long, her friends were getting handmade scarves and hats.
It was a way for me to give people something of myself, I think, and figure out something about who I was in that. And I think that even that helped me decide to go to grad school for psychology, that recognizing that I was making things for people, that I really cared about people and my relationships and everything.
It sounds small, but knitting gave Narig purpose. Now a clinical psychologist, she often recommends the hobby to her clients and explores its deeper meaning in her book, In Her Own Hands, Women Weaving Their Stories.
Weaving, knitting, crochet, cross-stitch embroidery, quilting, sewing. Gosh, there are so many beadwork, leather work or tanning hides and stitching on top of them, a lot of things. And there are many more. I don't cover macrame, for example, and like things that I just couldn't fit in, but there are so many rich types of textile work.
Textile work that gives meaning to people's lives, like Olutosin Adebowela, a Nigerian woman who empowered other women in her village through sewing.
She came to textile work following an abusive incident with her husband while she was caring for a young infant and asked her husband for help. And her husband responded by beating her. And she kind of had this real crossroads moment. Her family was telling her, all Nigerian men beat their wives, just accept it, deal with it. She had to go to the hospital for the injuries that she sustained. And she had this doctor at the hospital say, do not put up with this. You will die. This will end badly for you. And, raise your voice, speak out, leave him, or demand better treatment.
Even though Adebowela had a degree in English and was an educated woman, she felt defeated and worthless. She wasn't earning enough to support her child, so in an act of desperation, went to local tailors and asked for any leftover fabric scraps. At home, she stitched these pieces into small bags and pouches to sell on the side. As time passed, she sharpened her sewing skills and began building intricate fabric paintings that caught people's eye. For her, sewing gave her a new perspective.
If I can make something beautiful out of nothing, right, then I can make something beautiful of my own life, and I am worth something. I'm able to make things of value, therefore I have value. And she started this entire program for women in Africa, mostly in Nigeria, mostly who are coming from abusive relationships or who have been ostracized by the community and branded as witches, helping women learn how to sew and weave and create things to go into business, to earn an income, live independently or have a say in their households.
There are many such examples in Nerig's book, but textile work isn't solely for women. Gary Tyler went to jail at age 16 for a murder he didn't commit, and writes about his experience in his book, Stitching Freedom, a true story of injustice, defiance, and hope in Angola prison. He was finally released from prison after 42 years and says that learning how to sew and quilt helped him maintain his sanity. He first got involved in quilting through the prison hospice program and was skeptical at first, but his friends kept encouraging him to join them.
I reluctantly said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it this time. But don't ask me afterwards, I'm not going to do it no more. So they showed me what I needed to do. But that just only goes to show you when you start doing something, you get good at it. You start feeling good because you go to thinking about what you are doing. You're doing something for men that is dying in prison. That once they're gone, they're gone. But when they die, that quilt would be handed to their loved ones, their family. And that would be something that they'll be able to cherish for a very long time.
And then Tyler recalled a vivid memory from his childhood when he was in the countryside visiting his grandparents.
I used to always see my grandmother behind this old Sears sewing machine where she had this foot pedal, and she was making blankets for the family, those same blankets that at night we used to cover ourselves with to stay warm.
His grandmother stuffed those quilts with old newspaper, burlap, rags, and even moss as insulation.
So all that started coming back, then I realized, wait a minute, this is in my DNA. My grandmother was making blankets, and my mother was a seamstress where she was making clothes for herself and my sisters.
Tyler embraced his family's connection to sewing and quilt making and continued these traditions. After he was released from prison in 2016, he eventually went on to open his own art studio, where he continues to make quilts today. His work now hangs in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., and in the historic New Orleans collection. Tyler is grateful for the hope that quilt making gave him during some of the darkest moments of his life. Stories like Tyler's and Nerig's remind us that creativity isn't just about art. Sometimes it's about survival, expression, and connection. And maybe, as the year winds down, it's the perfect time to pick up something new, whether that's knitting, sewing, or something else that lets your hands and mind slow down and reset. Nicole Nerig's book, In Her Own Hands, Women Weaving Their Stories, and Gary Tyler's book, Stitching Freedom, a true story of injustice, defiance, and hope in Angola prison, are both available now online and can be requested through your local bookstore. To find out more about our guests this week and to view a performance of the band UB40 performing the song Tyler about Gary Tyler's fight for freedom, visit our website, viewpointsradio.org. This story was written and produced by Polly Hansen. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
This is Viewpoints Explained. I'm Ebony McMorris. It's almost Halloween, one of our favorite times of the year. Carved pumpkins flicker on stoops, leaves crunch underfoot, and swarms of dressed-up kids race to bag the most candy. But the real story behind Halloween isn't about sweets or costumes. The holiday's roots date back to an ancient Celtic ritual known as the Festival of Samhain. This period marked the end of harvest season and the arrival of winter's long, cold nights. According to records from the Library of Congress, Celtics believed the barrier between the living and the dead was at its weakest point on October 31st. To ward off these ghosts, people lit massive fires, disguised themselves in animal skins, and left offerings for the dead. As time passed and Christianity spread throughout Europe, the church reworked these older customs into new ones. By the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, or All Hallows' Day, and the holiday incorporated many of the traditions of the Festival of Samhain. The night before was known as All Hallows' Eve, and today we call it Halloween. Even many of our modern traditions, like carving pumpkins and trick-or-treating, grew out of this blending of faith and folklore. Long before jack-o'-lanterns, the Irish in the 1800s started this tradition by knifing scary faces into small turnips. These rough turnip lanterns were meant to frighten off any evil spirit said to roam on Halloween night. During the Middle Ages, needy children and adults took part in souling and went door to door to collect food and money from locals in exchange for prayers for the dead. Today, Halloween isn't so much a night of fear and faith, but one of fun and imagination. Hope everyone has a safe and happy Halloween. That's Viewpoints Explained for this week. More in a moment.
Welcome to Culture Crash, where we examine American culture, what's new and old in books, film, and entertainment. Sometimes it seems as though pop music is a dirty word. If you say you like listening to Top 40 radio, you may fear that you'll be perceived as shallow or immature, that you must like serious, melancholy music in order to be taken seriously. But why? The Beatles had 20 songs hit number 1 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and when you factor in anthology albums and best-ofs, 20 albums hit number 1 on the US Billboard 200. The members of the Beatles all continued to have pop chart success even when they went solo. Elvis Presley regularly had success on pop charts. So did Stevie Wonder, Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, and Ray Charles. In 2002, Justin Timberlake released Justified, his first album post-NSYNC. Critic Ben Ratliff gave the album 4 stars in Rolling Stone and wrote that Timberlake vaulted over the canyon toward adulthood. Even artists who never were in boy bands get this kind of treatment if they exist in the pop music realm. After Bruno Mars electrified the world during the Super Bowl halftime show, the LA Times noted that Mars was subject to much scrutiny before the performance because of his young age and inexperience. And that's probably closest to a good explanation of why pop music can feel like a dirty word. Pop music doesn't mean bad, it means young. But young performers have always been the artists who innovate. The reason critics gush over the Beatles or the Rolling Stones but act shocked when Harry Styles or Justin Timberlake impresses them isn't because Timberlake or Styles are untalented, it's because they're from generations below them. So feel no shame, wear no embarrassment. Listen to what you like. Make a playlist that jumps from Bruno Mars to The Who, from Stevie Wonder to Justin Timberlake. It's not all that different anyway. I'm Evan Rowe.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.